Hey guys, tonight we're diving into something cold, rigid, and unrelentingly raw, life in a late medieval Tudor palace. Not as a noble or a favoured courtier. No velvet feasts. Tonight you're not Henry VIII. You're just you, dropped unarmed into a world of flagstones, firewood, and the constant smell of someone else's boiled socks. Before we get going, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if my content helps you unwind. Let me know in the comments where you're listening in from, and what time it is for you. It brings comfort to know we are not listening alone. Now, dampen your lantern, and let's tread softly through the cold stone corridors of the past together. You wake before the bell, not by choice. The air is damp, and the straw beneath you smells like feet and pickled onions. You have slept in worse places, but not many. Somewhere, a rat shuffles. You decide not to investigate. It's too early to scream. You sit up slowly. Your bones protest. The blanket is more metaphor than fabric. You are in the servants' loft. Narrow rafters, low beams, 6 humans, and 1 ghost of ambition. A bell rings faintly in the distance. 4 in the morning. Time to serve people who won't remember your name. You don't stretch. There is no room to. Instead, you locate your shift by smell, trousers by guesswork, and your boots by accident. They are wet. Of course they are. Someone else is already awake. They're whistling. You will hate them until second breakfast. There is no second breakfast. You descend the stairs. They creak, like they resent the weight. Each step feels like a decision you can't afford to regret. Below you, somewhere in the darkness, someone is already shouting. It's unclear if it's in anger or triumph. You do not investigate. This is the beginning of another long, cold, Tudor day. You are not important. You are not special. You are not safe. But you are awake. And that, unfortunately, is enough. You make your way toward the scullery. That's where they expect you. Or at least, where they'll notice if you're missing. You pass by the good stairs. Polished wood. Tapestry nearby. Smells like rosemary and soap. You are not allowed there, which makes you want to be there very badly. At the base of your stairs, a chicken stands guard. You salute it. It does not return the gesture. Down the corridor, louder now, the first shout of the day. You haven't even touched anything yet. Impressive. You duck your head as you enter the scullery. The ceiling here believes in consequences. You have the scars to prove it. The fire hasn't been lit, or it has, but failed to thrive. Like most things in this building, you light it again, with flint and prayer. It answers with smoke and indifference. A boy runs past you with a tray of eels. He nods like you've shared combat together. You have. The grease war of last Tuesday. Someone throws a mop at you. This is not a request. You mop. You do not know what. The floor looks worse after you've started. You keep going. It's about the gesture. The bell tolls again. Breakfast prep begins. Not for you. For the ones who wear hats indoors. You haul water. You peel onions. You do both poorly. This is normal. Someone asks if you've seen the butter. You have not. You say you'll look. You don't. You spend 5 precious minutes standing near the fire, pretending to dry your hands, actually contemplating your life. Then someone sneezes on the bread. The moment is over. By now, the hall is bustling. Steam rises, sweat drips, chickens argue, and you, just a small moving part in a great machine of groaning wheels and boiling pots. Do what you always do. You keep your head down. You nod at no one in particular. You survive the morning. Congratulations, you've made it to dawn. The sun hasn't risen, but the ovens have. You're standing in a haze of flour and blame. Someone has misplaced the leeks. Someone else has accused you of stealing the leeks. You haven't seen a leek since last Tuesday. The head cook bellows something that might be your name, or a threat, or a seasoning. You nod. Not because you understand, but because it's safer to agree than to ask questions. A tray of meat pies crashes to the floor. Everyone stares at the boy who dropped them. No one helps. This is a test. He picks them up. He passes. Barely. Steam rolls across the flagstones. Like fog, if fog was angry and chicken-flavored. Someone hurls a wooden spoon. It misses your head, barely. You stir a pot. You don't know what's in it. It smells like beef and despair. Someone says it's for the nobles. You nod like that means anything. The pastry cook is crying. Again. You offer a cloth. He sneezes into it. You retract the cloth. Above the roar of boiling pots, the steward appears, clipboard in hand, quill at the ready. He surveys the chaos like it's an inventory problem. He calls out names. You pretend not to hear yours. It works. He moves on, behind you. Someone drops a basket of turnips. The sound is heartbreakingly loud. You whisper a short prayer to St. Quiet. The head cook says the meal must be ready by the hour. He doesn't say which hour. This is intentional. You're handed a bowl of eggs. You don't ask why. You're handed a whisk. You pretend you've seen one before. You whisk. The eggs rebel. One leaps for freedom. It succeeds. The floor celebrates with a splatter. A bell rings. Not your bell. One of the high bells. For real people. The kind with surnames. Someone shouts, "Hurry." Someone else shouts, "No." You pick the louder one. The pudding has collapsed. The bread has burned. The custard is curdled. And somehow, this means it's time to plate. You are now a serving assistant, which means you carry heavy things quickly and set them down with grace you do not possess. The plates are hot. The hallways are crowded. The tension is biblical. You walk carefully. You do not breathe. You do not blink. You are a statue with cutlery. You reach the door to the great hall. You pause. You straighten your back. You look like you belong. You don't, but it's a convincing lie. The doors swing open. Music plays. People chatter. Nobles laugh like they've never boiled their own socks. You place the dish on the table. A hand waves you away. Dismissive. Imperious. You return to the kitchen. You are sweating. Your feet ache. The eggs remain unforgiven. And someone, somewhere, says lunch is in 2 hours. You nod. You breathe. You prepare. Because this is only breakfast. The great hall is beautiful, grand, gilded, and full of people who believe you are invisible. You carry a platter of roast lamb like it's a sacred relic, because to drop it is to vanish from history. The table stretches longer than your memory. At least 36 nobles, some murmuring prayers, some already sneaking bites. One is asleep. The hall is alive with motion. Servants slip past one another like ghosts in coordinated misery. The steward watches everything, always. You deliver a pie. Someone sneezes. It's unclear whether from joy or allergy. You do not wait to find out. You refill a goblet with spiced wine. A lord asks your name. You smile politely, because your name is not required. The minstrels begin to play. The sound is cheerful, forced. You think one of them is crying behind his lute, but only slightly. A dog enters the hall. No one knows whose it is. It sniffs a plate. It leaves. You envy the freedom. A noblewoman waves her fan with the power of a small hurricane. It knocks a fig onto the floor. You retrieve it. The fig is then waved away. You eat it later. This is victory. A man in red velvet coughs something that might be Latin. A nearby lady giggles. You pass by unnoticed. This is also victory. The steward snaps his fingers. You are summoned. He whispers instructions. You nod. You have no idea what he just said. You walk away like you did. The meal drags on. You swap out trenchers. You clear away bones. You marvel at how much mess people can make without moving their legs. The lord at the head table demands a toast. You are holding the jug. You pour carefully. He nods. You are not dismissed. You are simply forgotten. Someone jokes about French manners. Everyone laughs. Except you. Because you don't get it. And you might be French. Dessert arrives. Sweetened pears. You are ordered to present them. You bow. You forget how. You recover quickly. They don't notice. The bell tolls again. Lunch is over. The nobles leave. Some take food with them. Others take each other. You take nothing, but somehow feel lighter. The hall empties. The music dies. You are left with the bones, and the crumbs, and your thoughts. You clear it all and begin again. After lunch, you are not dismissed, you are redirected to laundry, because today is your lucky day. The laundry room is beneath the kitchens, darker, wetter, louder. You are greeted by the smell of steam, soap, and something unnameable, something that died here and haunts only the linens. There are tubs, dozens of them, buckets too, no clear system, everything is damp, everything is angry. A woman with sleeves rolled up to her shoulders hands you a sheet. It is heavier than expected. You nod like you were trained. You weren't. You plunge it into a tub. The water is warm, then not. Your sleeves are soaked. You were warned. You ignored it. You begin to scrub. There is no rhythm, only resistance. The fabric bites back. You respect it, but not much. Another servant is humming. The tune is beautiful. It is a dirge. You realize you've stopped scrubbing to listen. She stops. You keep scrubbing. After the fourth sheet, your hands are raw. Your back aches. You are given soap. It does nothing, except remind you what cuts feel like. A bell rings, not for you, for others. You keep working. That's the system. Eventually, you are released, but not for rest. The latrines. You draw the short straw. You always draw the short straw. The privy is located in the far west wing, behind a door marked, God have mercy. No one goes with you. This is mercy. The smell hits before the door does. You open it anyway, because someone has to. And today, that's you. Buckets, brushes, regret. You scrub. You breathe through your mouth. You pray to St. Clogodria, patron of blocked tunnels. There is no victory here, only survival. You wipe the sweat from your brow, immediately regret it. Someone passes in the hallway. They glance in. They wince. They walk faster. You envy their freedom. After what feels like a fortnight, you emerge, changed, not stronger, not wiser, just changed. You return to the scullery to wash your hands. You overwash them. The soap now recognizes you by name. You sit for a moment. No one tells you to move. This is suspicious. You enjoy it anyway. Outside, a bell. Again, it never ends. You stand up. Because rest is a rumor. And you have chores. Still. Midday brings a shift. Not in the sun. In the mood. The nobles are walking, talking, plotting. You are sent to sweep the West Gallery, a long, echoing hall lined with tapestries, each one more judgmental than the last. You carry a broom. You are told to make yourself invisible. You've been training your whole life. The courtiers arrive in clusters, feathers, jewels, lace so fine it trembles. Their laughter echoes. You are the background. Two women pause near the window. One fans herself. The other fans gossip. Their words are soft, not meant for you. You hear every syllable. A man passes by in a doublet worth more than your entire bloodline. He glances at you, just long enough to remind you that you exist. Barely. You sweep, slowly, deliberately. It's not about dust. It's about presence. Your absence from their world must be seamless. You learn things, not useful things, dangerous things. Who favors whom? Who owes what? Who is one misstep away from the tower? You pretend not to know. You always pretend. The steward walks past. You lower your eyes. This is instinct. He does not stop. This is grace. You reach the end of the gallery. Turn. Sweep your way back. No one notices. This is your goal. A jester appears. Too early. Too loud. He stumbles, not by accident. The courtiers titter. He winks at you. You do not smile. This is survival. A shadow passes. A woman in black. High collar. Gloved hands. Eyes that do not blink. Everyone bows. You bow lower. You do not ask her name. She does not offer it. When she is gone, everyone breathes again. Even the tapestries seem to relax. Someone drops a goblet. It rolls toward you. You pick it up, return it with both hands. They thank you with a nod. A miracle. The gallery empties. The hush returns. You are alone again. You finish sweeping. The floor still looks dusty, but it's a different kind. The kind that's always been there, that always will. You lean on your broom, not to rest, just to exist for a moment. Then a voice, orders, new location, new task, because in this palace of masks and whispers, the broom keeps moving, and you with it. You are summoned, by name. This is rare, and never good. The steward hands you a package, wrapped in velvet, tied with ribbon. You are to deliver it to the Queen's chambers. You do not ask what's inside, because you already know. Shoes, or something pretending to be shoes. The Queen's slippers are sacred, each one a whisper of power, silk, gold-threaded, blessed by someone in a cathedral probably. You walk carefully, too fast and you sweat on the ribbon, too slow and they'll think you fled with the goods. The hallway tilts with anxiety. You pass paintings, eyes follow, judging. You reach the antechamber. A lady-in-waiting takes the package, does not thank you, does not nod, just vanishes. You stand there, alone, unsure if you've completed a task or failed one. You back away slowly, feet first. Returning to your usual duties now feels like walking backwards into the sea, but you do it anyway. You scrub a goblet. You carry linen. You refill a chamber pot. You are seen less than the candle smoke. Until a page appears. He is 12. He has power. He has a note. You are sent to the gardens, to tend roses, because a noble wants to walk by something fragrant. The garden is wide, walled, trimmed with suspicion. You clip the wrong bud. A bee investigates. You nod. The bee leaves. It understands. You trim, sniff, arrange. You think you've done well. Then someone yells that they preferred the violets. There are no violets. You apologize anyway. A cat appears. It sits on your foot. It's the most senior creature here. You let it stay. Back indoors, the hall is quiet. You polish the floor. It doesn't need polishing, but you do it anyway, because stillness is suspicious. The steward returns. He nods once, which could mean anything. Your hand still tingles from carrying that box, the weight of the Queen's slippers, real or imagined. Either way, you are reminded, even in silence, even as a servant, every object in this place carries risk, and sometimes it's not the sword that ruins you, it's the shoe. Evening nears, and with it, service in the chapel. You are not required to attend, but you are required to prepare it. You sweep the aisle. The dust here is finer, holy even. You sneeze once. It echoes. The statues disapprove. Candles are lit. Dozens, maybe hundreds. They flicker like a warning, or a test. The chapel is small, but grand. The ceiling, impossibly high. The air, thick with incense and quiet judgment. You straighten the benches, polish the brass, adjust a cushion that no one will sit on. It matters. The priest enters. He nods at you. No words. You take it as a blessing. Nobles arrive in slow, rustling waves, lace and velvet and obligation. Their shoes barely make a sound. Their voices are quieter still. You stand at the back, invisible, essential. The priest begins. Latin, smooth and slow. You recognize 3 words. One of them is sin. A woman sobs quietly. A man yawns with reverence. Someone drops a ring. It does not bounce. You retrieve it. You are not thanked. Behind you, a whisper. 2 servants discussing something urgent, or scandalous, or both. You do not turn. Turning invites attention. You listen instead. Names you almost recognize. Plans you don't understand. One phrase stands out. After the procession. The candles hiss. A draught sneaks down the nave. A chill follows. The priest raises his arms. You bow your head, not in devotion, in habit. The service ends. People file out, muttering prayers and other less divine things. You extinguish the candles, one by one, They go out with little sighs, like they know something's coming. The chapel empties. But you linger. Just a moment. The stillness is the closest you felt to peace all day. You place the cushion back, the one no one sat on, and you leave quietly, into the hush of a palace where faith is whispered, and power is prayed for in the margins. The sun has set, which means fewer eyes, but not fewer ears. You are told to fetch something, from the far end of the east wing, through a corridor no one likes to name. It twists, it narrows, it changes temperature halfway through. You pass a painting that's been covered, for decades. No one remembers why. No one removes the cloth. You walk slower here, not out of fear, out of superstition. The torches flicker. One goes out entirely. You don't relight it. You just walk faster. The item is a candlestick, left behind after a noble's visit. Brass, ornate, heavy with meaning. You pick it up. It hums, probably your nerves. Hopefully, you turn back. But the hall seems longer, or the light shorter. You hear a whisper. It says your name. It might be wind. It might not. You do not reply, because ghosts in Tudor halls love a chat, and once they start, they never stop. You reach the main corridor. Breathe again. Torchlight returns. So does logic. You pass a servant. He looks pale. He says nothing. You nod. He doesn't nod back. You walk faster. The steward takes the candlestick, doesn't ask why it's cold, doesn't notice you're shaking. You return to the scullery. You scrub your hands. They weren't dirty, but they are now. The other servants glance at you, some with curiosity, some with something else. You say nothing, because in Tudor palaces, there are things you carry. Some of them are brass, some of them are stories, and some of them never leave the corridor. The bell rings. Not for you. For them. It's the evening meal, a feast, a grand occasion. You will not see it. You will hear about it. You will smell it. But you will not touch it. Instead, you polish cutlery. Not silver. Pewter. The kind that bends under pressure. Like you. The hall above glows with torchlight. Music drifts down through floorboards. So do crumbs. You catch one, pocket it, hope. You are assigned to the cellar corridor, to run wine, from the cask to the hall, without spilling, without sipping. You walk that hallway 30 times, each trip lonelier, each goblet heavier. At one point, a noble stumbles past you, drunk on sugar and power. He calls you by the wrong name. It's not close. You nod anyway. Laughter erupts upstairs. Someone tells a joke, the kind of joke that ends in applause. You wonder if it involved your profession, or your country, or your face. You deliver a tray of sweets, almond tarts, honeyed figs, something red that glistens. You are told not to look at the guests, so you don't. You stare at their shoes. They are cleaner than your thoughts. You pass the kitchen again. The cook offers you a crust. He winks. You thank him like he saved your life. He may have. Back in the corridor, the air thickens. So does the noise. Feet stomp. Music swells. A toast is shouted. Someone throws up into a tapestry. You clean it, because someone must. You return to your post. You drink water. It tastes like copper and disappointment. You sit for a second. No one tells you to move, so you don't. The feast ends. The mess begins. You sweep. You collect. You wipe something that used to be fruit. You try not to think about it. You gather the leftover bread. It's yours now, sort of. You tuck it into your sleeve. Victory. The hall empties. The lights dim. The nobles stagger away. You remain. Invisible. Indispensable. You stack the chairs. You blow out the candles. You exhale. And you move on. Because tomorrow, there will be another feast, and you still won't be invited. Midnight comes softly, like a thief, or a priest with a secret. You are awoken by a knock, not loud, just persistent. A page tells you to report to the library. You didn't know the palace had one. You dress quickly. The corridor is colder now, quieter, except for your thoughts. They are loud. The library is dim, candle-lit, smells like damp leather and forgotten debts. You are not alone. 2 scribes, a steward, 1 noble half asleep in a chair. You are told to fetch a book. The name means nothing to you, Latin, or a riddle. You scan the shelves. They loom. You find the volume. Barely. The spine crumbles when you touch it. You carry it gently, like a sin. The noble nods, does not thank you. Again, standard. Then, a voice, whispered, urgent, not meant for you. You should leave. You don't. It's the steward. He's speaking with one of the scribes. Something about letters, something about France. You hear a name, you hear a price. You pretend you didn't. You cough, loudly. The conversation stops. You are handed a tray, tea, wine, a small wrapped package. You deliver it. No one stops you. Back in the hallway, another voice. Lower. 2 guards, arguing about a chambermaid and a priest, and something that happened behind the chapel. You walk faster, because secrets in this palace are heavier than stones. You return to your cot, lie down. The candle is still lit. You do not blow it out. You stare at the flame. It wavers. So do you. You close your eyes. Try not to dream about corridors, or voices, or books that bleed dust. Midnight passes, and with it, a dozen unspoken things. You sleep, but the palace does not. You wake again, this time to silence. No bells, no knocks, just unease. Something feels off, like air that's been listening too long. You rise. You're not on the schedule, but there is no such thing as off-duty. Not really. You pass through the west corridor, the one with the peeling tapestry. You notice it's gone. In its place, nothing, not even hooks. You find the steward. You ask. He frowns, says there was never a tapestry there. You ask another servant. She looks through you, says she's never seen you before. You check your hands, still there. Check your shoes, still wet. You go to the scullery. Your tools are gone. Your name scratched off the wall. You head to your cot. Gone. A new servant sleeps there, soundly, peacefully. You whisper your own name. It feels strange, foreign, heavy. In the corner of the hallway, a mirror. You check your reflection. It's there, mostly. You try to find the priest. You think he'll understand. You pass a window. Your face does not appear in it, just the candle behind you. You go to the chapel. It's locked. That has never happened. Not once. You return to the kitchens. The cook gives you a crust, just like always. He winks, just like always. You bite into it. It tastes like absence. You sit alone, listen to the bells. They don't ring for you anymore. Somewhere far away, a cat hisses. You hear your name, but it's not spoken, just remembered. Badly. You get up. There's work to do, because even if they don't remember you, the palace does. And it always needs servants, even the ones who weren't there. You lie down, back where you started, sort of. Your cot creaks, but it's not your cot. Your eyes shut slowly, not from peace, but exhaustion. The air smells like wax, and damp wool, and someone else's soap. Footsteps pass, faint, then gone. A bell chimes, once, late or early. Time is slippery here. The ceiling fades, you count cracks, then forget what numbers are. Sleep comes, but it brings nothing. No dreams, no memories. Just silence. You are no longer part of the palace, but the palace is still part of you. It does not let go easily. Somewhere, a door opens, a fire crackles, someone breathes a name. Yours, maybe, or what used to be yours. The candle flickers, the page turns, the night continues. So do you, but only barely. Good night, somewhere in the lowest dark of night. A knock echoes from behind the woodpile. No one ever hears it first. No one admits to answering. You meet him by accident, the man with the limp and the bag. He's not on the steward's roster, not on the payroll. No one remembers when he arrived, or if he did. He smells like boiled turnips and secrets. He hums to himself, names the traps. This one's Judith. He points to a sprung one. This one used to be Philip. You don't ask what happened to Philip. He offers you a biscuit. It's warm. You don't ask why. He explains that rats know things. They listen. They remember. He swears one spoke to him once, quoted scripture in French. You laugh. He doesn't. Later that morning, a sack of grain goes missing. The cook blames ghosts. You say nothing, but the rat catcher winks. You don't see him again for a week, but someone says they saw Judith moving, alone, with purpose, toward the Queen's chambers. You nod, then stop yourself, because it's too late. You believe now. The rat catcher works nights, but he's never tired. He says the palace sleeps in layers, and he walks between them. You ask if he's ever met the king. He says no, but the rats have. You believe him, and that's the problem. You hear it in the laundry first. A whisper. A rumor passed from wet sheet to steam-soaked apron. A nobleman once touched the Queen's glove, not handed it, touched it. He laughed. A day later, he choked on pheasant. No one questioned it. But the glove disappeared. Now, no one touches gloves, not directly. They're handled with tongs, wrapped in cloth, prayed over. There's a ghost, too. They say she walks the south hallway, only when the moon is full. Her hands are bare. She never speaks, but her breath smells of lavender, and her eyes never blink. You hear she's a washerwoman who saw something she shouldn't. A letter, a name, a seal. Some say she still scrubs blood from linens, even when there's no blood, even when there are no linens. You pass that hallway once. You feel a chill. You hear scrubbing, but there's no one there. Just a basin and a single glove. Left hand, lace, stained. You leave it there because you are not a fool. Later, someone jokes about the Queen's new slippers. You don't laugh. The next day, that man falls down the stairs and lands on both elbows simultaneously. No one calls it the ghost, but everyone avoids the stairs. That night, you dream of gloves and gloveless hands and eyes that don't blink. You wake up cold and find a glove by your cot. You return it to the hallway without touching it. You speak no word of it, because in this place, some things are only spoken once, and that is enough. There's a stairwell behind the northern storeroom. Everyone knows it. No one talks about it. It spirals up, 14 turns. Every step creaks. The air grows colder. At the top, a wooden door, small, locked, usually, but sometimes it opens. Inside, one window, no view, one chair, no legs. A desk, empty, except a single page. You once found it open. You entered. You shouldn't have. The door closed behind you. There was no handle on the inside. You knocked. No answer. You sat on the legless chair. It held, barely. The page on the desk was blank. Then it wasn't. Your name appeared. Then it vanished. Another name. You didn't recognize it. Then a third, and fourth, each one dissolving into the wood. You tried to tear the page. It wouldn't move. You tried to burn it. The flame went out. You whispered a prayer. The page responded. It blinked. Yes, blinked. You blinked back. Because that's the only polite thing to do. When the door finally opened, you didn't remember how long it had been. The sun was different. No one noticed your absence. The chair is still there, the page still blank, until you sit down. Then it remembers, and so do you. No one tends the hives officially, but there's always honey. They say the bees came with Anne Boleyn, or with someone who thought she'd stay. They live behind the northern wall, near the rose garden, a place so still the air hums. Once a week you see her, the woman with the netted veil, long sleeves, longer silence. She never speaks. She gestures. You obey. Once she hands you a jar. It's warm, sealed with wax, stamped with something that looks like a Tudor rose, but isn't. You taste the honey once. Your dreams change. You see the queen's smile, but her teeth are bees. You wake up with wax under your nails. The steward says no one has clearance for the north garden. You say nothing. Next time you visit, the hives are gone, but the woman is there, holding a candle. You ask her name. She laughs, then hums. Later, someone finds honey on the chapel floor. No one cleans it up. The cook swears the bees deliver messages, through patterns, through dance, through which flowers they die beside. You don't laugh, you write it down, in your smallest script, because one day, someone may need the honey, and someone will need to know the cost. No one plays fair at court, because there are no rules, only consequences. A page swaps 2 goblets. A lady-in-waiting trips and pretends it was the wind. A gardener hides a letter in the roots of a rose bush. You're told to deliver a tray, 2 cups, 1 message folded beneath the napkin. You don't look, but you think about it the entire walk. The steward eyes you as you return. He nods, but doesn't smile. Later, the tray goes missing. You say nothing. You are thanked silently and given a plum, the highest form of courtly affection. There's a game played behind the tapestries. It has no name, just whispers. It involves dice and favors, and sometimes a shoe. You watch it once, no one wins. But one girl walks away with new earrings. Another loses her post. You ask the rat catcher if he understands court games. He says, they're all still rats. You believe him. The Queen's fool once told a joke about a bishop. The bishop laughed. 3 days later, he left court. No one tells jokes now, only stories. And even then, the endings are vague. You try not to listen. But the stories pull at you, like a draft in the corridor, always colder than it should be, always going somewhere you shouldn't. You're sent to sweep the tennis court, not the kind with white lines and fuzzy balls. Real tennis, royal tennis, the kind of game played with gloves, rules in French, and a strong chance of decapitation if you hit the ball wrong in front of the king. The court is inside, stone walls, slanted roofs, strange netting. It smells like chalk and ambition. The ball is handmade, wool core, leather skin, hard enough to knock out a bishop, which may have happened, records unclear. The king plays, not every day, but when he does, the world rearranges. Courtiers line up to lose politely. Servants line up to cheer quietly. You line up to duck. There's a server, called a marker. There's a receiver. There's also something called a chase. It involves walls, angles, scoring systems from a particularly drunk mathematician. You don't understand the game. No one does. That's not the point. The king plays to win. He also plays to punish. Hit too well? Show off. Hit too poorly? Weakling. Hit the king? Dead. You've seen him sweat. Not a lot, but enough to know that even Henry VIII can't cheat his own lungs. One day he trips, slides across the polished floor. Everyone freezes. He laughs. Everyone laughs. He stops. Everyone stops. The ball continues bouncing. It lands in the corner called the tambour. No one moves to retrieve it. It's considered ominous. You sweep it up later, gently. You nod to it, just in case. When the match ends, the king throws his glove. You don't catch it. You let it land, then wrap it in linen, deliver it to the laundress. She burns it. They'll say it shrank, but you know the truth. It glared at her. There's a board that tracks his wins. No losses listed. No one knows where the losses go. Rumor is, one man kept score too honestly. He now oversees drainage in Calais. Still, tennis is sacred. Not the sport, the ritual, the tension. the slow build from silence to applause to silence again. Sometimes in the court's hush you hear a name whispered, yours, maybe it's the acoustics, maybe not. You don't play, you watch, and you never turn your back on the tambour, just in case it serves back. They say history lingers, but here it walks, softly, at first. They don't all rattle chains, they don't all wear white, some of them just never left. The first is Cardinal Wolsey's man. He stands in the Wolsey wing, always by the window, cloaked in crimson so faded it looks bruised. He never speaks, just nods once, every Thursday, just as the bells chime 3. They say he waited for the cardinal's pardon, that he was loyal to the end. The end came fast. His ghost didn't. He stares east, toward the Thames, toward nothing. The second ghost is louder. She hums in the kitchens. An old Tudor tune, mostly vowels and vinegar. No words. Just warning. She worked with spices. Her bones were found behind the chimney in 1822. No head. The cookbooks from that period omit her entirely. She throws things when ignored, spoons, rolling pins, once an entire duck. You say good morning when you enter, every time, even if it's midnight, especially if it's midnight. The third ghost lives in the haunted gallery. Yes, that one. Her name is Catherine Howard, fifth wife of Henry VIII, executed for adultery. The story says she ran through the corridor, screaming, begging Henry for mercy. He wasn't there, but now she is. Sometimes you hear the footsteps, rapid, skittering. Sometimes you hear her scream. Other times, you just feel it. The cold, the weight, the ache of being too late. Once, a guard saw her, said she looked him in the eye, said she knew his name. He quit, took up farming, refuses to eat beets. The fourth is a boy. They call him Silas. He plays in the West Wing, never where he died. You hear his laugh before you see him, if you see him at all. He wears blue, laced doublet, always barefoot. He likes cards. If you leave one on the windowsill, he'll leave you another. Usually a queen, usually hearts. He died of fever, or fell, or both. No one knows. But he's fond of the living, especially those who believe in losing. He doesn't like winners. The fifth ghost appears in mirrors, only when your back is turned. She wears mourning black. You never see her eyes, just the veil. She appears in the Queen's apartments, behind you, next to you, over your shoulder. You blink, she's gone, but your reflection smiles without you. She may be Jane Seymour. She may be something older, from the stones, from the air. She never leaves the mirror. But once, someone tried to cover it. The cloth burned. The sixth ghost is a smell. Burnt cloth, singeing hair. You follow it to a corner of the great hall. There's nothing there, but you can't shake it. They say it's from the fire of 1540, or a woman who burned her dress on a candle, or guilt. Once, a noblewoman confessed too loudly, then too publicly, then she vanished. They say that smell is her penance, and her punishment. There's a seventh ghost, a group, really. 6 monks. They march through the old cloisters. At dawn, when no one should be awake, they chant, low, Latin, not quite dead language, not quite alive either. The sound doesn't come from their mouths, it comes from the walls. The eighth ghost sits, just sits, in the small upper room by the gatehouse. He wears royal livery, but no badge. You find him staring, not out the window, at the fireplace. He looks like he's waiting, for an apology, for a fire, for someone who never came. Once you asked who he was. He said, still here, and vanished. The ninth ghost eats. Yes, eats. You leave out bread, it's gone. You leave out wine, it's drained. No mess, no crumbs, just absence. It lives in the cellar, or under it. You don't check, you just refill the tray. It's polite, at least. And then, there's the final one. The door in the old treasury room, the one that shouldn't be there. It opens now, just a crack. Behind it, Silence. Not quiet. Silence. The kind that crushes. You feel watched, you feel seen, you feel remembered, and something remembers you back. She is not a ghost. She is the memory of every unspoken thing, every hidden sin, every broken vow. She wears nothing and everything: crown, veil, chains, lace, flesh that looks like parchment, eyes that look like yours. You do not speak, you do not run, you do not blink. You close the door, for now, but you know. She will open it again, and when she does, you will answer. You're sent to help the falconer, which sounds noble, until you meet the bird. She's a gerfalcon, white, sharp-eyed, named Mercy. She has never shown any. The falconer is a quiet man, long coat, longer stare. He calls the birds his sisters. You don't ask. You're not sure they're joking. He hands you a rabbit carcass, says, "Hold this." Mercy takes it. So close, you feel her feathers brush your wrist. You nearly drop it. He nods. That means you did well. The aviary is at the edge of the gardens, secluded, sacred. You don't speak unless spoken to. The birds don't like gossip. There are 7 falcons. Each has a perch, each has a name, each has a kill count higher than most foot soldiers. You learn to tie jesses, leather anklets, dignified shackles. You learn to make the lure, a bundle of feathers on a string. You swing it, fast, hard. The falcons dive like fury in feathered form. The king visits sometimes. Henry. He wears a feathered cap and carries a glove that costs more than your family earns in a year. He watches them fly, then makes jokes about using them on his enemies. Everyone laughs. Even Mercy seems to smirk. You clean the mews. You get bitten. Once by a kestrel named Saint. She wasn't. You help bandage the falconer's hand. He was clawed. Didn't flinch. Said it meant she trusted him. You nod like you understand. You don't. There's one bird no one flies, a red-tailed hawk, caged, not chained, just waiting. The falconer says, "She sees things." You ask what? He says, "Decisions." You never ask again. At dawn, you release them one by one. They vanish into sky like knives into silk. At dusk, they return. Most of them. One day, one doesn't. Mercy. Gone. You help search. You whistle. You bait. You wait. She comes back at midnight, with blood on her beak, and a gold ring in her claw. No one speaks of it. You just add more meat to her bowl. There's a wall where the falconer carves their names. Every bird, every loss, every return. You carve one yourself, on your last day. Not your name, not hers. Just the word, Mercy. Because she gave you none, and somehow, that made you love her more. It begins with a duck. Specifically, your job is to pluck it. In the cold. By candlelight. At 5 in the morning. The candle keeps going out. The duck does not. Tonight is a feast, a full banquet, 12 courses, 400 candles, a guest list that includes nobility, ambassadors, and one man who's only invited because he owns a particularly interesting dog. You, of course, are invisible, which is preferable. You've seen what happens to visible servants. They're asked things. The kitchen's raw, fires, flour, flailing, boiling jellies, someone screaming for sugar, someone else screaming that sugar is the devil. You nod to both. The master cook shouts something in Norman French. No one speaks Norman French, not even him, but it adds urgency. You carry pies. So many pies. Swan, venison, peacock. One with a whole lemon in it for surprise. You don't ask. The menu includes boar's head with gilded tusks, lamprey in spiced wine, custard pie shaped like a lute, a sugar castle with working doors. The last one collapses. You pretend not to notice. So does everyone else. The clerk of the kitchen wears a feather in his cap. He says it's a badge of culinary vigilance. It's actually a quill from a goose he lost a bet to. As the hour nears, you're sent to light the candles. 400. Beeswax, imported, unholy. You get through 300 before sneezing. A blackout follows. Someone blames the devil, someone else blames you. You nod to both. The hall is set, banners, chandeliers, gold everywhere, not real gold, painted wood, but if you squint with enough hope, it shines. The guests arrive, perfumed, poised, peacocking. The musicians tune their lutes like it's a matter of national security. One of them is drunk, all of them are resentful. The king enters, Henry, wearing enough fabric to tent a village. His hat alone deserves a separate title. Everyone stands, then bows, then waits to be told they may sit, even his own relatives. The queen arrives late, not by accident. The food begins. You are background. Hands, trays, sweat. Your biggest challenge? The jelly swan. It wobbles. It judges. It almost slides. You recover with grace. Only two people notice. One is a noble. The other is the jelly swan. Each course is introduced by a herald. He has a scroll. He mispronounces lamprey twice. You still cheer. A nobleman tries to flirt with a duck. Turns out it's a very lifelike pastry. You escort him back to his seat. He thanks you. The duck does not. Midway through, someone begins a toast. To the king, to the court, to the duck, again. You clink cups behind the curtain. Yours is water. Possibly. A juggler is brought in. He juggles knives, then oranges, then regret. One lands in the soup. Nobody blinks. It's called citrus infusion now. The fire grows hot, sweat beads. The noblewomen wilt delicately. The noblemen try not to melt. You keep going. At one point you carry a platter the size of your bed. It holds a boar's head, with an apple in its mouth, and a poem written on a sugar scroll beneath it. You don't read it. You know it ends in a pun. Dessert is announced. Custards, marchpane, a jelly shaped like the castle, a pie filled with live birds. The birds do not fly out. They hop, then panic. One lands on the king's hat. He laughs. Everyone laughs. He stops. Everyone stops. The feast ends in song. The musicians remember the key. Barely. You begin the cleanup. Trays of bones, empty cups, dropped rings, someone's wig. You don't ask. A noble pukes in the corridor. A servant slips in it. That servant is you. You bow anyway. It seems polite. By midnight, the candles have melted into puddles. The tables have been stripped. The fire has died. So have three of the jellies. You sweep. You scrub. You sit, finally, next to the duck. You whisper, "Good feast." The duck says nothing. But you know. It agrees. You've been here too long. Your knees don't bend without protest. Your hands remember tasks before your mind catches up. Your back aches in places you didn't know had bones. The hall still smells of wax and wine. The tapestries still hang crooked, despite your best efforts. You sit, on a stool no one else uses, near the kitchen door, just in case someone needs something. They don't, not anymore. You've served kings, queens, pretenders. You once carried a chamber pot past a man plotting rebellion. He didn't notice you. Most people don't. That's your gift. And your curse. They still whisper of ghosts, but no one sees you fade. Because you never left a mark. No scandal, no record. Just folded linens and polished floors. You die quietly, off shift, in a cot smaller than your regrets. But death doesn't dismiss you. You wake up to bells, not funeral, coronation. The world is still Tudor, but it's not your time. Not quite. You're a ghost now, but not the moaning sort. You're still on duty. Time, apparently, has more floors to sweep. The corridor stretches longer than it should. Each door, a different year. You pick one and step into the Battle of Bosworth. It's loud, it's muddy, and everyone is overdressed for violence. Richard III charges with desperation. Henry Tudor barely holds the line. You watch from the sidelines, a ghost, a servant, not cheering, just noting who drops their sword. Richard loses. The crown is found on a bush, which feels about right. You blink. The bush is gone. Now it's Westminster Abbey. Henry VII is being crowned. His smile says, triumph. His eyes say, taxes. You dust a pew, no one notices, but the abbey shines brighter. You turn a corner. Henry VIII is 20. He's handsome, he's laughing, he's not yet terrifying. You pass through 6 weddings, each more cursed than the last. Anne Boleyn looks right at you once. Are you real? She asks. You say nothing. She nods like that's the right answer. You wipe blood from the executioner's block. It doesn't come off. You stop trying. Jane Seymour dies in childbed. The room smells like sweat and holy water. Henry weeps. You hand the midwife a towel she doesn't see. Years blur, beards lengthen, bishops burn, books are rewritten by decree. You walk through it all, still holding the towel. Elizabeth rises, not born of a queen, but made of iron. She sees everything. You try to hide. She says, I see you, Shadow, and walks on. You're proud of her, in a quiet, bone-deep way. Time skips. You hear Shakespeare. You hear plague bells. You hear nothing. You wander. Rooms become years. Curtains become reigns. You sit by the fire, alone, finally, until someone new walks in, dressed strangely, eyes wide, modern. They look around, at portraits, at dust, at history. Then they whisper, did someone used to live here? You smile and hand them a candle. Let them see, let them learn, let them remember, because even ghosts have work to do. It's dark, but not death dark, more cellars at midnight dark, damp stone, dust in the air, and the smell of boiled meat from somewhere too close. I blink, which is already a surprise. Last I remember, I was at Hampton Court, drifting through panelled halls, listening to gossip that hadn't changed in 300 years. Now, I'm in a different palace, somewhere older, grimmer, fewer tapestries, more shouting. I pass through a door that wasn't there before, and there he is. Richard, the third, you think. Not the Shakespeare one. The real one. Smaller, more irritable. He's pacing, boots loud against flagstones, one hand clenched around a rolled parchment, the other rubbing at his temple like he's trying to crush a headache before it starts. He doesn't see me. Of course he doesn't. No one ever does. I lean in, peek at the parchment. It's an urgent letter from the coast, the kind that drips salt even when dry. Henry Tudor has landed, Richard swears, creatively even by Tudor standard, then throws the parchment into the fire. I float back through the hall. Everything here is tense. Servants whisper, courtiers fidget. Someone is polishing a suit of armor like the shine might stop arrows. I know where this is going. I've seen the end of this chapter. I just haven't watched it start before. The king is calling for his commanders. The nobles are pretending they're braver than they feel. The horses are being fed double. It's happening. Bosworth is coming. And I'm awake again. Not alive, but not quite dead either. Something's pulling me through the pages of time, and I'm about to watch a crown change hands. Again. Not because I want to, but because I have work to do. Dust doesn't sweep itself, and history never stays clean for long. Bosworth, August 22nd, 1485. I was already dead, caught between banners. I think they trampled me twice. From the mud, I watched it happen. Richard charged, screamed something about a horse, didn't get one, got a pike through the back instead. And then Henry Tudor was king, not crowned, not celebrated, just the last one standing. He picked up the crown from a thorn bush. Literally. That's how it started. The Tudor dynasty. By accident. I drifted after him, a ghost in the new regime. He never saw me, not once. He barely saw anyone. Henry VII was not a man for conversation, or joy, or second chances. He ruled like an accountant with a grudge. If he could tax it, he did. If he couldn't tax it, he fined it. If he couldn't fine it, he married it off. He married Elizabeth of York to unite the warring houses. A red rose, a white rose, romantic on paper, deeply awkward in person. They barely spoke, which, in royal terms, is almost tender. I watched their coronation from the rafters of Westminster Abbey. Pigeons nested beside me. They had more freedom than most of the nobles. Peace was declared, which mostly meant nobody dared declare anything else. Henry set about stabilizing the realm. Translated, he executed the interesting ones, bribed the useful ones, and ignored the rest. I spent a lot of time in the counting house. He had more ledgers than children. He read them like scripture. Receipts for swans. Inventory of gold buckles. 4 shillings to silence a bard. That sort of king. But stability works. Sort of. Trade improved. Pirates got nervous. Nobles got ulcers. I saw Perkin Warbeck hang. Claimed he was a lost prince. Henry smiled exactly once that month, and that was the moment the rope tightened. I watched him walk through the gardens one morning, alone, no music, just the sound of bees and suspicion. He died in 1509. Not of battle, not of betrayal, but of everything catching up at once. The court wept politely. The servants were mostly relieved. And me? I waited, because I knew what came next. A boy, a second son, who'd spent his youth in libraries and jousts, was about to become the most dangerous monarch in British history. But we'll get to that banquet of a man next. I still hear the whisper Henry VII muttered near the end. Keep the books, burn the poets. He meant it. And now he's just another number in a dusty ledger, filed under, the crown found in a bush. Henry VIII didn't enter history. He barged into it, ate its dinner, took its wife, then wrote a song about it. When his father died in 1509, young Henry was 17, tall, handsome, athletic, the kind of man whose reflection applauded him, and the court loved him for it. After years of financial paranoia under Henry VII, this new king was a golden sunrise. He jousted, he danced, he composed music and insisted people liked it. He also married his dead brother's wife within weeks, Catherine of Aragon, Spanish, pious, polished. He called her his rose without a thorn. The rose would later be divorced, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. At first, everything was spectacle. Tournaments, feasts, more velvet than sense. He reintroduced majesty into monarchy, the kind of king who spent £100,000 on clothes, in a year when most people still counted wealth in eggs. I followed him everywhere, the ghost no one noticed, through secret corridors and steamy kitchens, through war meetings and love letters, and it was all so loud. Henry wasn't content to be king. He wanted to be remembered. He built ships, formed the Royal Navy, then lost most of those ships in storms and poor planning. He went to war with France, naturally, and declared victory after capturing a single town with more cows than people. Then, the great matter, Catherine, his queen, wasn't producing a male heir. That was unacceptable, because Henry believed God wanted him to have a son, because Henry believed he was a son of God. Enter Anne Boleyn, smart, sharp-tongued, unwilling to be a mistress. Henry fell so hard he broke England. He split from Rome, created the Church of England, named himself supreme head, executed those who disagreed. Just for context, he did all this to get a divorce. Anne gave him a daughter, Elizabeth. Not what he wanted, but it was a start. Then she had a miscarriage, and a second. And then the king began to doubt. She was arrested, charged with adultery, incest, and being inconvenient, executed in 1536. Henry married Jane Seymour the same month. She gave him a son, Edward, then died. The king mourned, wore black, commissioned paintings of sadness, then married 4 more women. Anne of Cleves, divorced. Catherine Howard, executed. Catherine Parr, survived. 6 wives, 2 beheaded. 1 survived him. His weight ballooned, his leg ulcer festered. He smelled of rot and rosewater. He designed his own tomb. And I hovered, listened, watched him age from lion to mountain. He ruled with charisma and terror. People loved him and locked their doors. He died in 1547, not gloriously, just bloated, infected, and wrapped in crimson sheets. A servant told me, before they bricked up my old passageway, the king has gone to meet his wives. I hope they talk first. Next up, the boy king, a reign as short as his shadow, because now England is Protestant, and no one's quite sure what that means. But Henry left one thing behind, a legacy shaped like a feast, and a knife hidden under every plate. Edward VI, the son they broke the kingdom for, he was 9 when he became king, 9. I'd seen boys that age get nosebleeds from spelling, but there he was, crowned with a crown too big, wearing robes that nearly tripped him. He waved like he understood the weight of it. Maybe he did. Maybe he just wanted a biscuit. I watched from the high beams of Westminster Abbey, same perch I took for his grandfather. Different tone. This one had more gold, less joy. Edward wasn't a king in practice. He was a symbol, a puppet with Latin homework. The real power, that shifted between Lord Protectors. First Edward Seymour, the Duke of Somerset, his uncle, then John Dudley, the Duke of Northumberland, definitely not his uncle, unless you count ambition as blood. They used the boy like parchment, wrote policies on him. Protestantism flourished under their rule. Monasteries vanished. Latin Mass vanished. Gold chalices vanished. And Edward? He wrote sermons. At 12, he penned treatises on predestination. At 13, he debated grown bishops. At 14, he issued orders like thunder wrapped in silk. He believed he was chosen. He believed the Reformation was his destiny. He believed hard. But bodies started piling up. Catholic uprisings in the West, economic unrest, and the prayer book rebellion. People didn't want sermons. They wanted food. I drifted through council chambers, listened to whispers of coups, watched Edward try to look taller in portraits. He wasn't unhealthy, not at first, but too many drafts, too many damp halls, and maybe too much belief. They called it consumption. His body consumed him, bit by bit, cough by cough. He wrote in his journal, even near the end, "I am ready to go to God." 15 years old, I hovered at the foot of his deathbed. The room was cold, not by temperature, by certainty. They'd gambled everything for a son, and God had taken him back before his voice cracked. The kingdom panicked. Edward named Lady Jane Grey as his successor, a cousin, a Protestant, a pawn. She lasted 9 days. The people wanted Mary, the first daughter of Henry, the Catholic one, and I drifted. From the deathbed of a boy king to the coronation of a queen who'd spent her life being told she wasn't legitimate. Edward believed in sermons, Mary would believe in fire, but we'll get to that. For now, I remember Edward's last words, "Lord, deliver me." Some prayers echo longer than others, and some ghosts never leave the schoolroom. Mary burned for belief, but I remember her tears more than her flames. She was 37 when she took the throne, not young, not radiant, not the princess the painters liked, but determined and worn thin by waiting. Mary had lived her whole life as a question mark. Daughter of Catherine of Aragon, her mother cast aside, declared illegitimate, then reinstated, then ignored. She clung to her faith like it was oxygen, Catholic, Spanish, devout to the point of bruising, and when Edward died, she returned from exile with the weight of half a kingdom's prayers. London greeted her like a miracle. At first, she promised to bring the old religion back, the Latin, the bells, the incense. She also brought the burnings, not at first, not loudly, but inevitably. I saw the first fire lit at Smithfield. 3 Protestants, cold morning, damp straw. They prayed louder than the flames. Mary didn't attend, but she heard about it, cried behind a curtain, then said, "The soul is eternal." She believed this was healing, a cauterization of England's sins, but England did not agree. I watched the sermons turn to screams, the bishops turn to bonfires. 300 people burned, men, women, a child. She never lit the pyres, but she didn't put them out either. They called her Bloody Mary. But in court, she wore lavender, and her eyes begged for someone, anyone, to understand. She married Philip of Spain. He arrived like a storm cloud with eyebrows, tall, distant, handsome in the way a statue might be. He left within months. She never stopped waiting for his letters. I once found her alone in her chapel, praying for a son, her hands trembling, her stomach flat. A phantom pregnancy, they called it, but she swore she felt movement. Instead, her body turned on her. Coughs, fevers, bleeding, a slow undoing. She died in 1558, childless, exhausted. The bells tolled in confusion. Some wept, some sighed. Her tomb reads Regina Regnans, the queen who reigned, but she ruled more in ash than in gold. As they cleaned her chamber, I lingered, folded her last veil, watched the fireplaces go cold. Her faith was absolute, her methods were not. History is cruel to women who wield power without sons. And now, a sister takes the crown. You'll know her. Everyone does. But I knew her first, as a daughter no one wanted. Now, she'll become Gloriana, the Virgin Queen, the mirror opposite, and for once, I won't be the only ghost in the room. Elizabeth wasn't born to rule, she took it. A second daughter, a bastard in the eyes of Rome, raised in the shadow of execution blocks and wedding rings. But when Mary died, and the crown sat unclaimed, Elizabeth walked forward as if the throne had always been hers. She wore white, always, said it showed no stains. I saw her first coronation robe stitched with Tudor roses, phoenixes, and eyes, always eyes. She knew she was being watched, and she liked it. The court changed. Suddenly, it was full of poets, spies, suitors, men who bent the knee and held their breath. She played them like a harp. I watched Robert Dudley sigh through a dozen dances. I saw Frances Walsingham write secrets in lemon juice. She never married. She said England was her husband, and the country swooned. There were threats. Mary, Queen of Scots, Catholic plots, Spanish ships. The Pope called her a heretic. Spain sent an armada. I hovered above the coast when it came. 130 ships, painted saints and ambition. And the English? Fire ships, storms, dumb luck. The wind favoured her. She gave the speech at Tilbury. I have the body of a weak and feeble woman, but I have the heart and stomach of a king. I'd never heard silence louder than the moment after. She became myth that day. Gloriana, the Virgin Queen, the bringer of peace, letters, empire. But she was also alone. At night, she removed her wigs, washed her hands raw, looked at portraits of a younger self. I saw her cry once, just once, when Essex rebelled, the boy she'd adored, the man who betrayed her. She signed his death warrant, then stared at the ink until it dried. Her reign was golden, but gold is cold. She died in 1603, standing, silent, uncrowned, but unbowed. They buried her beside Mary, sisters in blood, in pain, in crown, above their tomb, partners in throne and grave. History writes in ink, but I remember in breath, and Elizabeth's last breath tasted of rosewater, regret, and resolve. When Elizabeth died, so too did the Tudors. No more sons, no more daughters, no heirs of the blood. Just a cousin from Scotland, James, who would take the throne and the headaches that came with it. But make no mistake, the Tudors didn't vanish. They lingered, in law, in fashion, in fear, in how a crown was worn, and how it could be lost. I drifted through the new court, quieter, more Presbyterian. James IV preferred sermons to swordplay. He wrote books on demonology. argued with Parliament, tried to unite England and Scotland, with mixed results. But I still saw the Tudor shadow in every corner, in the whisper of Elizabeth's speech at Tilbury, in the faded paintings of Henry's face, multiplied like a patron's saint of appetite, in every English prayer that no longer mentioned the Pope. The Tudors rebranded monarchy. They turned it into theatre. Henry made it grand. Elizabeth made it divine. Even Mary, with her robes of lavender and her grief, left behind the scent of ashes that never quite washed out. And in their wake, a country no longer medieval, but not quite modern. A people who feared God, adored spectacle, and could still remember the smell of a burning heretic. I watched playwrights turn history into drama. Shakespeare dipped his quill in blood and rumour. He turned Henry V into a hero, Richard III into a monster, and gave Elizabeth immortality in verse. History became story. The Tudors made sure of it. And though James ruled next, he did so from within a palace they built, with ghosts they left behind. His son, Charles I, would learn nothing from them. He'd misunderstand divine right. He'd forget how to bend, and for that, he'd lose his head, literally. The Tudors might have burned you, but they wouldn't have bored you. Even now, in this afterworld, I find echoes. A cracked mirror in a forgotten gallery still holds Elizabeth's smile. A pair of shoes stitched for Henry VIII lies undisturbed beneath dust and judgment. A single charred page of a Protestant Bible still smells faintly of hope and smoke. The dynasty is gone, but the performance lingers. The crown now is just metal. It was once mythology, and the Tudors, they were its playwrights. As I leave these halls, as the candle gutters low, know this: you've just walked through an empire of echoes, and some of us never left. Bonus chapter: The Witchfinder King. James Stewart did not see ghosts. He saw witches. It was the first thing I noticed when I followed him into court. The air didn't smell of incense or politics. It smelled of sulphur and suspicion. James I of England, the 6th of Scotland, came south already armed with books and beliefs. Chief among them, that Satan walked in human skin, and that women, mostly poor, mostly strange, mostly old, were his favourite disguise. I'd seen monarchs burn heretics, but this was something else. He wrote Demonology, a guidebook on how to spot, interrogate, and destroy witches. He described covens and midnight flights, pacts signed in blood, storms raised by whispering. He believed it because he nearly drowned in a storm at sea once. Someone told him witches caused it, and that was that. The king was obsessed. He turned superstition into state policy. In Scotland, his witch hunts had already led to hundreds of trials. In England, he encouraged magistrates to search, strip, and shame. They pricked women with needles to see if they bled. If they didn't, witch. If they did, probably still a witch. I hovered over more trials than I care to count. The confessions were always the same. Yes, I flew. Yes, I danced with demons. Yes, I cursed a cow. They said whatever was needed to stop the pain. Some truly believed they were guilty. When the king believes in devils, it's hard not to find one in your mirror. James held audiences with witch-finders. He met Matthew Hopkins, a man who made a career out of paranoia. He questioned whether cats were familiars. He listened to tales of frogs that spoke in Latin, and through it all, he remained certain. He was the protector of the soul, the hammer of witches. I watched one woman, Agnes, walk barefoot to the stake. She sang as she went. James didn't hear it, but I did. A lullaby, the one she'd sung to her son. She died with her head up. The court clapped. This wasn't Reformation. This was theatre again. Only the smoke was darker. Over time, even Parliament grew wary. The executions slowed. The trials began to feel thin. Too many had burned. Too many had confessed to impossibilities. James aged. The fervour cooled. He still wrote about demons, still dreamt of witches, but he began to look more for angels. I stood in the gallery the day his son, Charles, took the crown, and wondered which ghosts he would fear. James died in 1625, in his sleep, peacefully. No devils, no spells, just a man who mistook nightmares for strategy, and left behind a kingdom still searching for someone to blame. I stayed a while longer, among the ashes, where superstition was thicker than incense, where even the ghosts were afraid. They crowned him James, King of Scots, and now King of England, but he ruled like a man afraid of everything that breathed. I remember the smell of his coronation, wet velvet, candle wax, and the nervous sweat of noblemen unsure if a northern king would understand southern etiquette. He brought with him a mind sharpened not on law or strategy, but on demons. James believed witches whispered behind every tree, that Satan held councils in the woods outside Berwick, that tempests which sank ships were not acts of God, but Sabbath-born sabotage. He didn't just fear the devil, he needed him as an enemy, as an explanation. That's why he wrote Demonology, a strange, fevered book that read more like obsession than scholarship. I hovered beside his writing desk as he scratched quill to parchment, eyes sunken, hands shaking slightly. He cited scripture, he cited Aristotle, he cited rumors, testimonies from terrified peasants and tortured women. The king was building a theology of fear, and his kingdom followed. Scotland's trials surged. Women were dragged from their beds, midwives, widows, herbalists, accused not for what they'd done, but for what someone dreamed they'd done. One said she had a cat, another said she muttered during a thunderstorm. That was enough. I watched one such trial, North Berwick, a church dimly lit, packed with the curious and the cruel. Agnes Sampson stood, accused of raising storms and killing King James by proxy. She was stripped, shaved, prodded until they found the devil's mark. She confessed eventually. They always did, because pain makes believers of us all. James watched some of it, from a distance, always from a distance. He didn't like blood, only the results. When he became King of England, he brought his demons with him. Suddenly, southern courts echoed with northern superstition, and every servant who spilled a drink, every woman who gave birth to stillborn twins, became suspect. The king spoke of Satan in Parliament. He believed witches plotted with Catholic agents. He saw treason in dreams. He was not mad, not entirely, but he was possessed, not by spirits, but by the ghost of control, and the country followed. Because when the king believes a woman can curse a harvest, the harvest becomes her crime. Because when the king demands witches, the people find them. Because the Tudors made monarchy a performance, and James was a method actor. But unlike Elizabeth, who conjured awe, James conjured fear. He feared women, feared the sea, feared being unloved, and so the stage was set, the script was written, the fires were stoked. And me? I stood by, a ghost at the edge of every court, watching as England's new king chased shadows, and called it justice. If James lit the match, it was men like Roger Nowell and Matthew Hopkins who threw on the kindling, and then sold tickets to the fire. I remember Pendle Hill. Its air always smelled of peat smoke and mistrust. It began, as these things always do, with neighbours, and the rot between them. A beggar woman asked for milk. She was turned away. That's all it took. The cow fell ill. Someone muttered, "Witch." Someone else nodded. And soon, 12 people were in chains. Mostly women, mostly poor, mostly guilty only of being noticed when the weather changed. I drifted beside them through the cells at Lancaster Castle. No windows, just straw, wet walls. The accused whispered psalms, or nothing at all. They didn't scream when condemned. They already knew. Because fear is a ritual in England, and they'd seen it before. Hopkins was worse. Matthew Hopkins called himself the Witchfinder General, but no one appointed him. He made his own job. He charged towns for the privilege of panic. His methods? Simple. Starve, strip, sleep deprive, dunk. If she floats, she's a witch. If she drowns, she's innocent. How convenient. I watched one trial in Essex. A girl of 15. She'd talked in her sleep. A sister said she saw her consort with a black dog. That was enough. She was watched. Sat awake for 3 nights, naked, under guard. They said a familiar would visit her. It didn't. So they invented one. The trial lasted half an hour. The execution lasted less. Hopkins wrote about it. He wrote everything down. His book sold better than most Bibles. He said witches could fly, could vanish, could kiss the devil beneath the tongue. What he didn't say, he made a fortune. Some say he drowned. Some say he hanged. Some say he fled to Norfolk, where no one asked too many questions. I know the truth. He died in bed, surrounded by silence, and the women he killed, they stayed. Pendle never recovered. People still avoid the hill, still whisper about the old families. I walk there sometimes, among the moss and heather. The air remembers screams, and no one forgets the name, because history is more afraid of silence than guilt. They never burned them at night. That was for show, for mourning, for God and gossip. But the trials, they belonged to dusk and to dread. I sat on rafters and behind pews, unseen and always watching. In makeshift courtrooms from Yorkshire to Devon, the candles burned low and the questions grew cruel. Have you lain with the devil? Did you ride the wind? Can you weep without prayer? I remember one, in a small chapel near Canterbury, a widow in her 60s. Agnes, they called her. No surname. She had a wart. She had a cat. She lived alone. She was doomed. The judge didn't look at her when he read the charges. They never did. She stood barefoot on stone. Her hair had been hacked short. She smelled of ash and fear. They asked if she had cursed her neighbour's barley crop, and she said, no. They asked again. She said no. Then they asked for the last time, but this time they asked with thumbscrews. And after a few turns, she said, yes, they always did. Because England didn't need truth. It needed spectacle. Each trial had its roles. The accuser, righteous and shaken. The judge, cool and courteous. The priest, sweating under his robes. The accused, always the same. Women who birthed stillborns. Midwives who knew too much. Old women who brewed herbs that worked better than prayer. A girl once confessed to flying on a broom, not because she did, because she thought that's what they wanted. She imagined it. They punished it. Her crime wasn't sorcery. It was imagination. And I was there when the jury whispered. She smiled once. She didn't cry. She looked proud, as if dignity were a sign of guilt, as if silence meant pact. In another town, they accused a man. Rare, but not unheard of. He was soft-spoken. He carved spoons. He sang while he worked. That was enough to make him a danger. He quoted the Bible wrong under pressure. They called that a pact with hell. He was found guilty, not of magic, but of difference. He died still humming. They called it a curse. I called it resistance. The sentences came quickly, hanging usually. Burning was rare, reserved for heresy or when the crowd demanded fire. But the gallows, those were steady. Wood never lacked employment, and in those moments, before the rope tightened, they all looked up, at the sky, not because they expected angels, because they knew no mercy waited below. Sometimes they sang, sometimes they cursed. One girl spat on the priest. He said nothing. He was crying. I drifted close to her after. She whispered, I did nothing. I whispered back, I know. She didn't hear me. But I stayed beside her until the morning, because the truth was buried long before her body, and long after, I still remember, because these weren't trials, they were performances, rehearsed, hollow, sanctified, and even now, centuries gone, I still hear the curtains rise. The courtroom was a stage, the judge, the priest, the accusers, actors playing parts written long before the trial began. I drifted through halls heavy with incense and fear. Lords and ladies sat stiffly, watching the theatre unfold. The accused, usually women, rarely men, stood alone, their fates sealed by whispers and looks. The law was a weapon wielded unevenly. Sometimes mercy was shown, rarely. Mostly it was swift judgment. One case sticks with me, Elizabeth Sawyer, accused in Essex of bewitching a child. She was old and poor, her tongue sharper than her neighbours liked. They called her hellish hag. They said her touch made flowers wilt and cattle sick. She swore she was innocent, but the crowd wanted blood. She was condemned. In another village, a woman named Joan was accused of cursing her husband's crops after an argument. Her punishment was exile, a sentence as cruel as death in those times. I followed one trial where a mother was forced to watch her daughter burn for witchcraft. The screams haunted the night, echoing long after the flames died. The people wanted witches gone, but they wanted the drama more. Trials became social events, gossip spread like wildfire, a neighbor's grudge could become a death sentence, and the priests, they blessed the court, sanctifying the fear. They preached fire and brimstone, promising salvation if only the witches were purged. Yet, even in these dark moments, there were cracks. Some judges hesitated, some jurors doubted, and some accused found unexpected allies, but the tides of hysteria were overwhelming. And I watched the theatre with hollow eyes, knowing the truth would never be heard, because in these courtrooms, fear always won. History rarely whispers. It lingers in silence, yes, but not stillness. The Tudor and Stuart eras, spanning the 16th and 17th centuries, did not unfold quietly. They arrived like tempests and lingered like smoke, filling every corner of England's soul with ambition, blood, faith, and fear. 2 centuries, 2 dynasties, stitched together not with thread, but with fire and steel. A time when crowns were not ornaments but burdens, and swords not just tools of war, but instruments of law. These were years when belief itself became battleground, and identity was shaped by the flavor of your prayer, the language of your Bible, the loyalty of your heart. Kings ruled not just over land, but over conscience. Queens didn't simply govern, they haunted, inspired, endured. It was an age of immense transformation, and yet, at its core, it was a drama of people, flawed, devout, terrified, ambitious. Some wielded power like lightning, others were consumed by it, and most tried simply to survive. I've walked through these halls, not as a king or a chronicler, not even as a subject, but as something in between, unseen, yet ever present, a witness to a world caught between medieval shadows and modern dawn, a soul drifting through royal chambers and peasant hovels, battlefields and birthing rooms, execution scaffolds and candlelit chapels. I have seen it all. The Tudor Flame, Kingship as Rupture. Henry VIII stands tall at the threshold of this era, a monarch as brilliant as he was brutal. A Renaissance prince turned ecclesiastical arsonist. His appetite for control was matched only by his hunger for legacy. When the church refused to bend to his desires, he broke it. England's break with Rome was not born of doctrine, but of dynasty, and yet the consequences outlived him. When he tore down monasteries, he didn't just loot stone and silver, he shattered centuries of spiritual comfort. When he established the Church of England, he did more than crown himself supreme head. He planted seeds of suspicion, schism, and surveillance. Faith became a test, a threat, a political badge. Those who worshipped wrongly, or too loudly, risked ruin. His daughters would inherit not only his throne, but his legacy of spiritual warfare. Mary, I tried to turn back time. A child of exile and trauma, she ruled with fire and absolutes. Her reign, though brief, scorched the land. Over 280 Protestants were burned for heresy under her orders. To some, she was a savior, to others, a tyrant. To history, she became Bloody Mary, but that name masks complexity, her piety, her loneliness, her desperate hope for unity. Then came Elizabeth, a queen forged in fire, reared in suspicion, skilled in survival. Her throne was never secure, her gender, her parentage, her faith, her legitimacy, all questioned. And yet she endured. Through cunning, charisma, and sheer political instinct, she held the reins of a fragile kingdom. She wore the crown with the grace of a myth and the weight of a soldier. She made an icon of herself, wrapping virginity in symbolism, silence in strategy. Her portraits showed power, but her letters reveal a woman constantly calculating, dodging war, and balancing on the edge of rebellion. Her rule birthed empire and theatre, exploration and espionage. But even in her golden age, the fires of fear never died. Catholics plotted in the shadows, Protestants muttered about reform, and all the while spies watched, ink flowed, and gallows loomed. The Stuart storm, masks of divinity, mirrors of doubt. When the Tudors faded, the Stuarts emerged. The crown passed to James VI of Scotland, who became James I of England. He was a scholar and a king, a lover of words and of order. Yet he brought with him a deep mistrust of the world, a conviction that the devil moved among his people. Witch hunts intensified under James. He wrote of demonology. He saw darkness in women, in foreigners, in the unexplained. Trials spread like wildfire, especially in Scotland, but the flames licked England too. Superstition did not die with the Middle Ages. It metastasized, fueled by fear and politics. A neighbor's curse could kill. A midwife's herbs could condemn. James also brought dreams of union, of a united Britain, of peace, yet his legacy is complex. He authorized the King James Bible, one of the greatest literary and theological achievements in English history, and yet he governed with a divine right that alienated Parliament. Tension grew. That tension erupted under his son. Charles I believed in kingship as sacred theatre, above questioning, above negotiation. But his subjects did not. Taxes levied without consent, religion shaped by royal whim, power hoarded in silence. These were not the traits of a beloved sovereign. England fractured, civil war came, and for the first time in its history, England executed its king. Charles died with dignity, some said. As a martyr, others claimed. But the truth is simpler and more profound. The axe fell, and something changed forever. Power was no longer God-given. It could be revoked, even destroyed. The interregnum that followed, Cromwell's Puritan rule, was no peaceful answer. It was a grim, grey shadow of the monarchy's gilded past. Joy was suspect, theatre silenced, faith policed, and though the monarchy would eventually return, it would do so changed, diminished, more cautious, less divine. The unseen lives, ordinary souls in an age of judgment. Yet history is not made by monarchs alone. For every queen in velvet, there were hundreds in linen. For every prince with a sword, 1,000 ploughmen. These centuries belong not only to those crowned in gold, but those broken in silence. Servants carried whispers between rooms. Midwives held truths in bloodied hands. Witches, so-called, knew the properties of root and leaf, of moon and tide. They did not summon devils. They healed, guided, survived, and for that many were hunted. The common folk, peasants, tradesmen, seafarers, lived between decrees and droughts. A change in monarch meant a change in prayer. A poor harvest meant death. To live through the Tudor and Stuart centuries was to walk a tightrope of obedience, resilience, and luck. The Reformation changed not only worship, but identity. To cross yourself, to own a rosary, to hide a priest, these could damn you. So too could absence from church, a murmur against the sermon, a question too boldly asked. Justice was rarely just. Trials were swift, prisons filthy, execution public. The scaffold was not just a punishment, it was a theatre of power. Bodies twisted in wind told the living what fate awaited disobedience. And yet, these people endured. They sang, they married, they told stories, they dared to hope. They stitched meaning into quilts and carved it into wood. Even in suffering, they dreamed of better. Witness and whisper, my place in the tapestry. I have seen them all. I was there when Henry raged, when Elizabeth wept in private, when James trembled before a masked dancer, convinced she bore the devil's eye, when Charles whispered prayers beneath white linen as the block waited. I was there when a village huddled, silent, while a girl burned, when a mother gave birth in a cottage marked by plague, when a playwright scratched out verses under candlelight, changing language forever. I drifted through their moments, not as a ghost, not quite, but as memory made manifest. I watched the rise and fall of empires, the fiery trials of the accused, the slow, reluctant dawn of reason. I listened to sermons that soothed and those that shattered. I followed physicians with knives and alchemists with dreams. I stood in silence as doubt began to murmur beneath the surety of doctrine. Because that's the great secret of this age. It did not only burn, it learned, not quickly, not kindly, but inevitably. From fire came questions, from blood came books, from sorrow came science. What began as divine monarchy ended as constitutional crisis. What began in Latin ended in vernacular. What began in fear ended, slowly, imperfectly, in something approaching freedom. The embers remain. So what now? Now, centuries later, we remember these stories in museum glass and schoolroom texts. We know their names: Elizabeth, Mary, Henry, James, Charles. But do we feel their world? Do we remember the servants who vanished without record? The midwives whose cures outlived their trials? The children who prayed in both Latin and English, unsure which God was listening? These echoes remain. Because history is not just a series of events. It's a collection of moments, moments that never truly fade. In the silence between the flames, between the crowns and the curses, I still linger, not to haunt, not to judge, but to remember, to whisper the names of the forgotten, to honor the questions that outlived the kings, to light a single candle where fire once ruled, because history, real history, never truly lets go. Thanks for joining me on this journey through fire and faith, crowns and curses. If you've enjoyed wandering these haunted halls of history, make sure to like and subscribe, only if it helps you drift off to sleep, of course. Tell me in the comments, where would you like to travel in time next? I love seeing the quiet corners of the world where history finds its audience. Until next time, rest easy. But remember, history never truly sleeps.